I did not see you there. Welcome to Jacob's Chinese Kitchen. Today, we'll be learning to make traditional Chinese meals. Not that, cameraman.
Oh, we made it through the firewall? Oh. Welcome to the underground broadcast of Democracy Now! Brought to you by Aleve. For anyone suffering another authoritarian rule headache, Aleve is the way to go. Now let's get down to the real stuff. Today we will be discussing the issues of democracy, protests, human rights, and the rule of law in China. Joining us today is Ai Weiwei to talk about his art in China. We also have guests Chen Guangchen, Li Chuobao, and Wei Jingsheng. Now let's begin.
如果再不迅速扭转局面，广大的革命的先烈用鲜血创造出来的中华人民共和国的前途和命运，都面临着严重的危险。
戒严部队在天安门广场绝对没有打死一个学生。也没有压伤一个人。
Catherine Bradley is with us to talk about the new movie based on the Tiananmen Square massacre. Welcome, Catherine.
Glad to be here.
To begin, could you describe to our viewers what Tiananmen Square is?
The Tiananmen Square protests of 1989 were also known as the June 4th Incident or 89 Democracy Movement. Basically, what happened was a bunch of students and people gathered in the square to protest the lack of democracy and freedom that they had. Unfortunately, the crackdown that initiated on June 3rd and 4th of 1989 was deemed by the Chinese government as a necessary response to the so-called counter-revolutionary riot. Since then, the Chinese government has prohibited all forms of discussion or remembrance of events, and because of the lack of information from the Chinese government, many aspects of the events remain unknown or unconfirmed.
Catherine, what was your motivation to make this movie?
I really wanted to capture the struggles of the students and people of China at that time. The thing is, even after this massacre that happened over 25 years ago, people are still under authoritarian type rule. The people of China will try to look up Tiananmen Square and find that the event does not exist in their search engines.
What do you hope to get with this movie?
I hope to show the people of China the horrible events that have occurred, as well as the rest of the world, in order to establish the fact that many of their rights and freedoms are lacking.
If you had one thing to say to all of our viewers in China right now, what would it be?
Run! Get away! Get out now!
Okay, now for our first commercial break. And when we come back, we will hear from civil rights activist and artist Ai Weiwei.
Are you tired of struggling with chopsticks? Well, we have the solutions for you. Have someone else feed you. Use your fingers. Or use a frickin' fork.
Welcome back. To introduce our next guest, let me speak a little bit about him. He was a consultant architect for the National Stadium for the 2008 Beijing Olympics. He's an outspoken activist for human rights in China and criticizes the government often. He investigates government corruption along with cover-ups. He was arrested for 81 days on April 3, 2011 for economic crimes. Please welcome China's most famous artist and world-renowned architect, Ai Weiwei. Does anybody know where he's at?
Sorry, Miss Julia, sorry. I was actually just finishing this painting for you.
Isn't that the creepy guy from the cooking show?
Shh! Thank you. It's such a nice, apple.
See, it's not an apple. As you can tell by the darkness and brights in the apple, it resembles the good and the bad that we face here in China. You see, it is the strength in which all of us endure through these tough times, especially with our government.
I'm pretty sure it's just an apple.
But it's not.
Anyway. So, you're an activist.
Well, an artist, a lot of people forget, world-renowned and Beijing's most famous.
Right. Tell me about your most recent discoveries, like the Sichuan school corruption scandal.
So yes, this is a very hard topic to talk about because in 2008 there was an 8.0 magnitude earthquake that killed over 50,000 people. And the saddest part was that 7,000 classrooms, newly built classrooms collapsed, and 5,000 students died and 15,000 injured. And so as journalists and as investigators looked into it, we realized that how could 7,000 newly built classrooms just collapse, just like that? And then we realized that none of these buildings met governmental standards. And most of the money given to these projects were just taken by the people. And that was just the hardest part to learn about. And so people who just expected to get an education in these rural areas just passed away.
Well, on the topic of corruption, there's been a lot of talk of corruption within the Beijing Olympics. Do you have any comments?
Well, corruption, yes, but more so there was a tightening of government right after the Olympics. You see, a lot of people were starting to feel happy with the government. The government was starting to loosen on the people, and individual freedom was returning to the people of China. But as new ideas and different people came in from the Olympics from different countries and they started to talk with the Chinese people realized that why are they talking about all these freedoms that they have and we don't?
While you were in jail, you had a lot of support. Am I right?
Yes, and this is really nice to hear that world leaders, journalists, and political activists all over the world offered and were truly telling the government to release me. And so everyone around the world really stood together and they knew that I was in jail not because of any economic crimes, as you said, that I committed, but because I was outspoken. I spoke against the government and they did not like that.
Well, thank you, Ai Weiwei.
Thank you, Miss Julia.
When we return, we will be discussing, put the apple down, we will be discussing some other political activists. Thank you.
Thank you.
New York Times reporter Mark Landler directed a volley of questions at President Obama and Chinese President Xi Jinping during a press conference with the two leaders on Wednesday.
Several months ago in Shanghai at a conference, you said it is for the Asians to run the affairs of Asia. I wonder whether you're concerned that this strategic pivot represents an effort to contain China. And then, if I may, lastly, on a parochial issue, several news organizations from the United States have had issues with residency permits in China being denied, including the New York Times. I'm wondering, in the spirit of these reciprocal visa arrangements that you've agreed to this week with business people and students, isn't it time to extend that sort of right to foreign correspondents who seek to cover your country?
After Mr. Obama answered his part, Xi removed his headset to signal he was moving on. Mr. Obama smiled and shrugged.
President Xi Jinping will take a question from a member of the Chinese press.
He did finally answer Landler's question, though.
It's perfectly normal for there to be different views expressed about us in the international media. And I don't think it's worth fussing over these different views. And I don't see any of the regional free trade arrangements as targeting against China. China is committed to open regionalism. And China protects our citizens' freedom of expression and the normal rights and the interests of media organizations in accordance with law. On the other hand, media outlets need to obey China's laws and regulations.
Next, we have 3 pro-democracy activists who will be sharing with us their ideas. Please welcome Cheng Guangcheng, Liu Xibao, and Wei Jingsheng. Hello, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
谢谢.
Thank you. Let's start with you guys talking a little bit about yourselves. How about you, Cheng Guangcheng?
Yes, so I'm primarily a civil rights activist for the rural parts of China, but I've also helped those in the major cities. So, unfortunately, my attempts to help others have caused harm to my family, and a few of my family members have been murdered by the Chinese government. I've been self-taught in law, and I've attempted to help people by using the Constitution and by telling the government they cannot put certain rules on people because the Constitution says not to, but they still do, and since it is an authoritarian rule, they do not care about what I say. I was under house arrest in September 2005 till March 2006, and I was formally arrested in 2006. And in 2012, I fled to the U.S. Embassy, and they gave me a visa to stay in the United States, and now I work at the institution, the Witherspoon Institution.
You two have seen how cruel the Chinese government can be. In fact, all of you have. Liu Xibao, you were let out of prison on special terms for this interview. Any thoughts?
Well, as you said, I'm currently in prison. In 2009, I was sentenced to jail for publicly stating that China needed a new constitution. The government has said that I'm in jail for subversion, which is a common term they use to put people in jail or sentence political opponents. I do have many accomplishments, though. On December 10th, 2010, I was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and I dedicated it to all of those affected by the Tiananmen Square incident.
Well, I'm sorry you couldn't make your Nobel Peace Prize ceremony, but I'm so glad you were able to make this once-in-a-lifetime interview. Now, Wei Jingsheng, you are prominently known for the Fifth Modernization. Can you please talk a little bit about yourself?
Well, in 1978, I published an essay on the democracy wall entitled The Fifth Modernization. I was arrested several times, ultimately serving 18 years in prison. And I was deported to the United States on November 16th, 1997. In 1998, I established the Wei Jingsheng Foundation and in New York City. Since then, it was moved to Washington, D.C. with its main goals as improving human rights and democracy in China.
And you also wrote a book, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes, well, in prison, I published my book, The Courage to Stand Alone.
Wow, thank you all for sharing your experiences. It was such an honor having you. Next, we have an exclusive interview with the leader in China, Xi Jinping.
Hey you! Yeah, you! Are you tired of watching boring presentations all day? Well, so are we. But we found a solution. Traditional Chinese yoga. Now get up off your butt and move! Ready? Ji, Ki, Shu. Tiani. Cheesy. Ping Gao. Quick! Apple tree.
Welcome back. It is time for our exclusive interview with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Thanks to our secret agents, we were able to kidnap the president and bring him here to share his thoughts. Whether they be forced or willing, please give a warm welcome to China's leader. Welcome. No. We brought you here today to talk about human rights in China. Can you please explain the advances China has made?
See, over the last 3 decades, I believe that we have made a great progress in human rights. Recently, I made agreements to lower carbon emissions and increase travel to the United States. See, we have also produced new legal aid services to the victims of domestic violence, to those children who are disabled and adults who are disabled, and also other groups that may be at risk.
With all of the good, there's a lot that China needs to improve on. Am I right?
No. See, when people come to China, there's freedom for everyone. Freedom for religion, freedom of the press. It's a free country, see? Just like the United States.
If you want to leave, you have to be honest.
Okay. I admit that there are issues on political participation and also freedom. Freedom of religion and the use of the death penalty. And I must admit that we do lead the world in executions. Many of the people detained in our jails are activists and political opponents to the CCP. We have tried to stop these people by putting them in jail, and we have also tried to stop people's access by creating the Great Firewall of China. This has made the freedom of speech much harder to try to get by. So. And the final ingredient, as we've used every time, salt. Remember, just a pinch, okay? And remember the seconds. 3, 2, 1. That's all the salt we need. And a little stir, and there you have it. The perfect traditional Chinese meal. I want to thank you for joining me on my series finale. After 15 years, the show has finally come to a close.
Thank God.
It has been a long, hard journey. We have made incredible foods, and today we have made foods that no one in the world has ever witnessed.
Is someone gonna tell him?
What do you mean they broke through the firewall? Tell me what they say. What? Never work with 3 girls. And which killed over 50,000 people. World renowned. Major earthquake that it attacked.
I'm gonna pee my pants.
Let's talk. Never had to face. It was worse than jail. I was in classrooms. This is what warms my heart the most. We're finishing. Wait.
Hello, and thank you for being with us today. Let's start with you guys talking a little.
You're laughing out loud! You're laughing at a blind man!
Let's start with you guys talking a little bit about yourselves.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Let's start with you guys talking a little bit about the president and bring him here to share his thoughts.
I can't even see. Wait, I was like.
We made a great, you know, the last 3 decades. I believe we have a country, but I mean over the last. I heard Julia. I made agreements to lower